Hello, my name is Molly Urban, and I wanted to share another perspective on leadership today. We've been exploring how to handle people who seem to trigger over the slightest comment, especially in today's contentious economic, political, and social climate. It seems so often that people are so quick to try to prove how they themselves are right, to the point that they don't even hear the other person who is sharing another perspective. This leads to further frustration and distrust. How can we as leaders help stubborn team members without escalating the argument? I like to use a technique called the Weedkiller Approach. Do you know how modern weed killers work? They're not herbicides. They don't poison the weed. They fertilize the weed. Actually, a weed has a handful of aspects that have to grow at the same rate in order to sustain the weed. Weed killers fertilize 2 to 3 aspects of the weed. These aspects grow faster than the rest of the weed can support, and the effect is that the weed dies. Likewise, I fertilize the arguments of others. Instead of trying to kill their argument in one step, I try to help them grow their argument. First, I try to understand the other person, and this lowers their defenses, unless they don't want to be understood. Second, I try to repeat back to them their perspective to their satisfaction. In fact, this is one of the goals that I have. Argue someone else's point to their satisfaction. This is great because I end up truly understanding the other person, and I'm able to guide the discussion from there because I have all the information. The next step is to take their position and use it in another context. I like to take it and see if it holds up in a bigger picture or a longer-term situation. If it's a good argument, it holds up. I can agree with them, and they never knew I disagreed. I win. If it's bad, it falls apart, and the other person can't complain because it was their argument. I used this technique recently with my home team when my youngest son was making a case for not doing chores anymore, so I asked him questions to make sure I understood him. As I began repeating back to him and starting to build the case for him, he started getting excited about how much extra time we would have to play and do fun stuff if we weren't doing the boring stuff. I then took it bigger picture and longer term by asking, well, what would we eat for dinner tonight if no one cooked? What dishes would we use if they were all dirty? And what would we wear if all of our clothes weren't washed? He paused and tried to come up with some alternatives like ordering food or using paper plates, but when he realized this also meant no more toys because we'd be using all our money on takeout and disposable dishes, he realized he didn't like this idea anymore. He agreed if we all did some chores, it would be better for our whole family. I didn't have to lecture him or argue or raise my voice. He came into agreement on his own accord. So, are you ready to help all your teams consider another perspective without escalating tempers? Thank you for letting me share my leadership thought. Have a great week.